for this seminar than the three gentlemen that we have with us. Companies that have been extremely influential in the last few years in the gaming industry, and that are definitely very, very much poised to not just continue being very influential, but deciding and defining how the games industry is going to evolve in the next 15, 20 to 30 years. So I'm thrilled to have Chris Petersen from Fantasy Flight, Mr. Ball from Mayfair, and Justin Ziran from Wizkids. And guys, the first thing that I wanted to get with this seminar is to get your impressions as to where do you think the games industry is now, right now? Because in the last 3 years, and to tackle the elephant in the room, Kickstarter has made quite a few ripples that are really having an impact on an awful lot of the ways that business are being made. Where do you think the industry is today, Chris?
There's a number of questions in there, actually. Yeah. I think the industry is in a really great spot. When we take aside the notion of any individual company, if you go out there as a gamer and you see the diversity of games and what you can participate in, and the quality of everything, it's great. And ultimately, that's really important, because that's going to get more of us, more gamers, and whatever experience that you come into this industry for. My experience is that a gamer, once a gamer, always a gamer. I've never actually encountered anyone who sort of was like, yes, I used to be a gamer, and now it's terrible, I won't do that anymore. Never happens. There's a lot of times where people drift out of gaming, usually because of career, children, I moved to an area of the world where there was no gamers, then I moved back, and oh my God, it was like coming home, because there was gamers around. Of course, one of our goals is to make sure there's no areas in the world where there's no gamers, so you can all freely move around. But from that perspective, I think it's in a really good spot. There's always been the thing to talk about, whether it's Pokemon has taken over everything, or collectible games taking over everything, or Settlers is just taking over everything. Right now it's Kickstarter. So I'm happy to talk about Kickstarter, but I sort of felt that it's almost like a separate discussion. Unless you really want me to get into that right now, but it's a fairly long-winded thing, so maybe we...
No, absolutely. I mean, more than what impact Kickstarter has had is basically, what do you think the industry is compared to where it was 5 years, 7 years ago?
I'm not sure that I know what impact Kickstarter per se has had. Except for a few early elements of it. Certainly, I mean, our company's doing great. Sales are growing. We're getting more fans than ever. So, if Kickstarter wasn't around, would we have gotten more or less? I don't know. But I do know that there's some elements of Kickstarter that are fantastic. I started the company back in 1995. Scrounging money to publish a board game. If I had Kickstarter, I would have been delighted. It would have been wow. Where would it be today if we had Kickstarter?
But it would have been through AOL.
Yeah, AOL dial-up Kickstarter. In fact, AOL was after we started. We started in '95. We had a fax machine the first 3 years.
CompuServe.
CompuServe, or what was AOL? Anyway, that's a detail.
CompuServe is a competitor. That's why we have GIFs. Yeah.
So. Again, we can get into more detail about Kickstarter if you like, but I feel that in the sense of the large organizations, including Justin's or whatever, I'm not sure how great of an impact it is. Now, I don't know if it's just the upward wave of how games are doing is so great that any headwind that's caused by Kickstarter is forgotten or somehow is negated. Mm-hmm. Could be. It's also possible that Kickstarter actually is helping. Don't know. I have some things I think are delightful about Kickstarter. I have some concerns about Kickstarter, but like I said, they're quite detailed, and I almost feel like we can get into.
Yeah.
Would you want to get into those now, or do we want to continue?
Let's go into the other panelists.
I think
we can easily come back.
I think that's great.
Kickstarter. I feel that the conversation can go for an hour.
Yeah.
Bob, how about you? Mayfair's been going on for a very, very long time. Where are you guys at?
We're fine. We're doing fine. We're getting bigger. We're expanding more rapidly sometimes than we can control. Chris and other associates here are very familiar with that pain, getting bigger faster than you can control. But as far as Kickstarter goes, I don't know that it's been bad. I don't know that it's been good. I know that there have been failed deliveries that have affected people's attitudes towards Kickstarter, but in some ways it's probably good as far as awareness. I don't agree with all of the tactics and the things that have happened up there. I don't think all of them are bad. It's the usual mix with you get people involved and money. But certainly more people are aware of games today, partially because of Kickstarter and its Amazon funding, than they were 5 years ago. Because it's made national news, right? And that has an international news. And that, of course, always affects us. It makes people, oh, I didn't even know you guys existed over there in the corner. So.
Justin, how from Wizkids' point?
So I think we're in the height or the midst of gaming renaissance. I think
Good word.
last year at Essen, I heard a stat where over 1,000 board games were introduced over the past year, represented at Essen. Think about that. That's 20 games per week. I think that creates immense opportunity and immense problems. And I actually think the Kickstarter revolution is a function of so many people rushing to the game industry that it creates a problem for publishers, distributors, and so access becomes a problem. And so, as water tries to find the path of least resistance, this thing called Kickstarter's out there, let's try this, and all of a sudden you see this rather disruptive force emerge. Now, I think there are massive problems with Kickstarter. I've often thought about how to exploit kind of Kickstarter, and there are some interesting, things you can do. But in the long run, I think Chris and I were just talking about this the other day about some of the side effects of Kickstarter and what does that mean. That, on the contrary, on the other side of that, I think there are some wonderfully innovative ideas out there, and they're making some noise on Kickstarter, and we welcome the competition. I actually think it's better for all of us. We certainly don't ignore Kickstarter, but I'm certainly not concerned about it impacting the game industry in any major way, other than having all the bigger companies elevate their games, and those that don't, I feel bad for. But if you're not looking over your shoulder, someone else is coming to eat your lunch.
You three companies have very different kind of games. Do you think there is some sort of common element that is driving, because all of you are doing really well, do you think there is a common element that's actually driving your companies to grow at the pace that are growing?
Quality. We all provide a quality entertainment. We give our consumers, I think, we give our consumers a good bang for the buck, as we say. Not one of the three of us feel we produce substandard or inferior product. We're very conscientious about it. And I think for the most part, our customers know that, and they respect that. So, we won't be affected by negatives unless we create them ourselves.
Chris, how do you feel about that?
Well, I agree. I think there's a lot of sort of a confluence of factors of what's really driving the industry today. Quality of gameplay is one. I mean, if you just go back and look at, sometimes I think it's unfair. We get judged sometimes and stuff we do. If you go back and look at a 1988 product and you look at the stuff we get complaints about now. But, we have to take it and we have to improve. And then I think, we all push, better all the time. And I think that's really improved and helped everyone, because ultimately we all want a lot more people coming in and playing games with us. There are some effects of demographics that I think have really helped us. We've had the D&D generation, which is a bit older than I, have had kids. Some of you guys, parents, may have played D&D, and that's always good, because like once a gamer, always a gamer, and you start having your parents sort of, hey, we should play a game together. Right? That's helpful. Another generation is the Pokemon generation. There was literally almost every kid in the entire planet found their way to a game store back about 12 years ago. Some of those kids are not kids anymore. Some of them have kids now, right? And they're finding their way back to that environment. Maybe not in nearly as the same rate. Somebody who's into D&D was really much more of a gamer than somebody who's necessarily into Pokemon for a couple of months. but there's that. There's the just a general slow attrition that's happening. In my opinion, it's sped up with shows like Tabletop, or we just Tabletop, and some other events like that. Particularly these guys with Settlers have really forged a path into the notion, particularly in America, that there are good games that are not Sorry or Monopoly or Yahtzee. When I started, and you went to any game store, game stores really, what I mean by that is, I mean like your Toys R Us or your Targets or your Walmarts or your whatever. The games that are there, it was a non-gaming thing. I mean, there's Monopoly, Yahtzee, whatever flavor of Hungry Hippos that were there for the moment, and in a way that's still the case. You guys have some pretty good presences, some pretty good inroads into the mainstream markets now, and so there's a few games that have really done a really great job of what we call gateway gaming, right? Introducing new people to it. The rise of the digital generation, the way people work, the way their minds work. They played computer games with these fantasy, science fiction themes, and they realize they're cool, they're awesome. The whole world has rediscovered Lord of the Rings just 10 years ago. All this stuff is just this massive demographic, I think, movement towards coming into the genres and the experiences that we have. When I talk about the digital demographic, a lot of most people that play games I know also play computer games to some level. And one of the biggest customer groups that we have, in fact, are people that work at computer game companies. Almost to a T, the computer game companies, 2,000 person computer game company, will say, we all play your games, we all play Magic, we all play X-Wing, we all play Hero. I mean, these guys are huge physical game lovers, right? These are the guys who make computer games. I mean, does that make sense? Yes, because I feel that the kind of experiences that we deliver are not really in competition with computer games, despite, having FFG for about 20 years. The most common question I get is like, oh, what do you do? It's like, I make games. Oh, do I know any? And they always feel like they are software games. It is a default. It is sort of the default attitude for anybody that's what you do. Oh, you clearly make computer games. And when some, no, in fact, I make board games. I'm like, oh, didn't computer games kill them off years ago? And of course, the fact is that they didn't, and it's not that they are not really. They don't really fight each other. They actually are complementary, and maybe in a slower way. Computer games surely are much greater industry than we are, but we have grown along them, and there has not been a pillaging of our fan base. So
I think
a lot of big question.
I think there's something that computer games don't deliver, which is watching the face of your friend as you screw them, and watching the agony as you beat them, and something computer games have never been able to deliver, at least not face to face.
You can't bluff a computer.
But I mean, my most memorable moments in gaming are D&D games or Magic games, and I remember them to this day, where I was, who I was with. And you establish these friendships that you're just not able to do on the computer. In fact, I know a lot of people, I have a lot of friends on my buddy list, yet I haven't met any of them, and I haven't shared a laugh with them, I haven't shared a meal with them. And my closest friends are friends from my gaming groups, and I think Bob nailed it when he said we deliver immense value. And I look at the growth of Fantasy Flight and Catan and ourselves, probably in the last 5 years, in the worst recession, as the world went into recession, yet all these game companies thrive. And Bob said it best when he says we deliver a high quality value experience. And when you spend $50 on a game that you can play over and over and over again and immerse yourself in these properties, in these fantasy worlds, in these alternate realities, I think it's often a lot better than going to see one movie in and out,
sell dreams,
or one meal. And you have this repeat play and immersion that you just can't rival in the digital world or even the entertainment world.
No, that's absolutely very, very true. The other thing that has stricken me in the last few years is how many absolutely amazing games are coming out of the US. Because traditionally we had, Germany was considered to be
surprising.
How do you feel?
But it started at Avalon Hill.
Probably. But we have, the reason I'm saying this is traditionally Spiel has been the trade show. It's been the place where games have been released, it's been the trade show. Last year actually Gen Con took over, which is quite amazing.
A number of people,
But they're very different, very, very different shows.
Absolutely, yes. No, I'm not, I absolutely agree with you.
And also, you can look back historically.
Yeah.
Prior to 1973, wargaming in the United States, Avalon Hill Gaming, was a huge business. I mean, huge. Every Toys R Us carried the entire product line in the United States. And people wargamed. I mean, they played board strategy games. But 1973 changed that. The Vietnam War ended. It was not cool to play military games anymore. And I think that had a massive impact mentally. You didn't tell people that you were a wargamer. You just didn't say it.
I don't. Just let me ask you guys a question. Have you ever launched a title at Essen? Because we have not.
Well, we don't really publish in German, so no.
Yeah, I mean, so I think maybe the question is more a matter of perception, because there certainly have been a number of years where the Euro genre of games were dominant, and the more American style games maybe weren't quite as visible for a while, and so maybe the perception was that Spiel was the show. For us, it's a great show. I love Essen, no digs, but for us, Gen Con was always our show, and that's for everyone that I know of in the U.S. hobby market was the show to release that. We always sold more games at Gen Con than ever, even far more than Spiel. Even though it's sold plenty of games there, I'm not trying to diss it. So I think maybe what we're looking at is more of a perception. Is the Euro games are going into a new phase, and also there's this discovery of the American style games that are quite successful right now.
Okay. And where do you think the industry is going now? What do you think is going to happen in the next 5, 10 years? What? Yes.
So I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I believe, a lot of the things that I mentioned earlier, 1,000 games per year, actually create a lot of systemic issues, in that manufacturers or publishers can't really pick the game design that's going to be the next big hit. Distributors have 50 manufacturers saying, hey, I got the next big thing, and there isn't a way to sort this out easily. So what I think will happen over time is that there will be a shakeout. And that shakeout will cause consolidation. I don't think that's bad for the industry necessarily. I actually think that the category leaders or the industry leaders will actually thrive in that environment. But short of some other kind of disruptive mechanism, I think there will be, I think we'll start seeing fewer board games over time, and the higher quality board games will rise to the top.
Well, this in my career will be the 5th shakeout. Or 6th. I mean, we had the SPI Avalon Hill shakeout, where the SPI died. And so did People's War Games and 65 other companies in the United States. And a number of
TSR shakeout.
Yeah. And then TSR and a whole plethora of role-playing game companies imploded in 96, 97, 98. And then because of the card glut. And then the card game industry imploded. I don't think we're going to see quite the same thing, though, here in the board game business, because it's not strictly hobby. We all have products that attract different audiences than the traditional gamer, and so the stability of the companies is different. When you have everything that you've produced can only be sold to a hardcore gamer, and that hardcore gamer changes direction, you're done. You don't have the time to reposition yourself. And if you didn't see it coming, which no one ever does, because everything is moving along really so well, the steam engine's going, and you realize there's no track at the end of the cliff there. Many companies will survive. A lot of smaller companies will fail. A lot of people that do Kickstarter projects, we're learning, the discussion we should probably go into, don't understand capitalization of the product. They don't have enough income. They can't actually deliver all their goals. They end up some of them have filed personal bankruptcy to try and fulfill their goals. that process is continual in the industry. Will board games go away? No. Will we lose a number of publishers? Certainly. And it'll usually be publishers who didn't complete games, who have produced a lot of products that, for want of a better word, were, well, put to market too fast or insufficient quality and don't have the name. But it will shake out.
Chris, what's your impression of what the future might bring?
He's going to buy it.
So to clarify, the question is, what do we see the industry doing next 3 to 5 years?
Yes, basically.
Now that these guys have answered, I'm leaving. So I got the answers. Now I got it all figured out.
He's going to get some really cool new licenses.
I'm gonna go plan for these guys' futures. Of course, nobody really knows. I think the notion of a glut has existed for a while. I can't speak to what's that's going to do. I think Justin's analogy of like there's too much water wanting to come into the pipe, and then if it can't find its way in the pipe, it's going to find its way elsewhere. But maybe it's going to make people wet. I don't know. The thing that concerns me most, and this is where we get into Kickstarter, is and you mentioned it very astutely, which is the idea of value. One of the biggest concerns that I have that may disrupt the marketplace is if there's an overall perception that games should be able to deliver it on a global scale at a price that it can't. And one of the things about Kickstarter is that when somebody comes into that area and they realize, man, I can make this game for $40. That means I can sell it for
42,
$80, or even 80. I'll double my money and I'll sell it at 80. Yay, and they put a lot of stuff in there, and then they also lose some money because they're pushing in the shipping, they're pushing in some incentives and so on. That's a huge problem because pretty soon the amount of stuff that's in that $80 game, you as a consumer look at and go, wow, that's what should be in an $80 game. That's practical, that's realistic, he could do it, why can't these guys? And the real trouble with that is one of a perception, because in order to get a game to other than the 800 backers for that game, you have to deal with a very, very large global distribution system that services you guys. And this global distribution system costs money, and there are people that handle it that have families and have children and need to buy clothes and shoes. And the people that make the games, one of my most important goals is to make a good life for the people that work for me. And we're not talking about Ferrari driving lives, we're talking about reasonable careers within an area that they love and which hopefully I can provide some stability for. And these things cost a lot of money. If most retailers get between a 40 and 50% discount on the product because they invest in inventory that may sit forever, it may never sell on their shelves, so they need discounts off this stuff. And pretty soon that person who made that $40 game, he goes out and says, I made the game, all right everyone. Retailers, will you buy this? And the retailers go say, yes, this is an excellent game, I will buy it for $40. And the guy, the Kickstarter person is like, but that's my cost. And oops, and all of a sudden what happens is that beautiful game gets to about 800 people. That's it. So if we're going to get into a world where everything is direct, everything is sold directly to everyone else, that would be a very different world from today, and that may end up happening. That certainly would disrupt us greatly.
Logistical nightmare.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's really realistic, because we all
nightmare.
We all learn new games by coming to shows like this, by going to retailers and talking to people, and we all need. I certainly, as a company, we need people out there to help us distribute these and ship these and handle these and get them efficiently into retail stores all across the world.
Freight, duty, customs,
overhead,
lights, electric.
I think you're right.
So, the one thing we have to do, for example, is that we have to do safety testing. We have to do, when something says CE in the back, that's not free. We have to make sure that it has the correct chemicals, that everything is done well. We have to make sure that any manufacturing chain that we have is an ethical one, that there isn't manufacturing that's done via child labor or overly polluting or in dangerous work conditions. And all these things cost substantial money, and it's something that maybe the Kickstarter person is not almost assuredly not thinking about. In fact, most of the publishers are not thinking about these things, but when you get to a certain size, you have to, because you become a very big bullseye, right? And so my only caution is that when you see somebody deliver a Kickstarter to that 800, 1,200 backers, is that the perception of what that game should cost may be skewed, because there's really no way necessarily for me to deliver that $40 game that the person is making for $80. It's just impossible. You know, an $80 game for me should cost about $24, $25, $26 maybe, or even less. I mean, so in order to efficiently get into the system. And so what I'm hoping is that people start realizing this a little bit. But if the perception of value in the minds of everyone changes because of Kickstarter, that is my only real problem I have with Kickstarter. That's very dangerous, because then suddenly we will also deprive our ability to actually get these out in the world, which deprives our ability to generate gamers, which deprives our ability to find players, and so on and so forth, and hurts everyone in the end. So that's kind of the nightmare scenario. We feel like, what happened next 3 to 5 years? And I think there's been like, oh, it's going to be dark. I don't personally think it's going to be dark. I think it's going to be great.
For us.
Yeah, well, for every, I mean, I'm optimistic. You're not in this industry without being fairly optimistic.
But the industry's never been all dark for anyone, or all light. There's always the coming and going of companies as we go through life.
Yeah, I mean, there are shifts, there are changes, there are consolidations, there are new growths. You know, we were a new company, and about 20 years ago. And do you remember going to the Chessex Open House about 1996 or whatever?
No, I was at Liberty.
Oh, Liberty Hobby, that's right. Well, I went to Chessex Open House, which was one of the biggest distributors back
Don
then.
accidentally sent me an invitation. I told him I would come, and he went,
Don was the owner at that point. Don Rent's the owner of Chessex, which is the biggest distribution company in the United States. We would go to there, and it was actually really awesome, because it was very much smaller industry back then, and everybody would set up their booths and show their small games in their warehouse. It was hot as hell, because it was like July in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he would have a tent out back where he would be roasting a big cow, and there would be kegs of beer, and it was very collegial. So it was very awesome. But there was a shirt that he gave everyone that participated, and had all the companies on the shirt. There's probably 100 companies on the shirt, and it is one of the shirts that I sometimes bring up to my staff as a warning. It's like, look at all these companies, and there are 2 that survived, and this was in 1996. Mayfair was one of the things that did not survive. They're in the rebirth period right now, right? It is a tricky marketplace. It's changeable. You know, really more like a movie studio than a book publisher, because, you know, about 75 to 50% of our products, maybe not you, but certainly for us, of our revenue is derived from new products, coming up with new cool stuff, and so we have to constantly, you know, be on the ball and constantly sort of imagine great things. And maybe one year, you know, we don't, and then we could have a correction. But overall, I'm optimistic. But we all have to realize that we're in a tricky niche hobby industry where people's tastes, just like you say yourself. I mean, just 3 or 4 years ago, it was the Euro game hobby was more prominent, obviously here, than elsewhere, and things shift and move. And we try to be, as a company, diverse enough to have a leg when one disappears. Yeah.
How do you feel that 3D printing, considering how quickly it is advancing, is going to affect you guys?
I love it. We use it extensively. I don't see it as a viable alternative to manufacturing for a very long time.
You talking about 3D printing?
Yeah. Yeah, for a very long time. I mean, we've embraced the digital workflow, so we sculpt digitally, we output, we tool digitally. So it's actually allowed us to, we're very prolific and very fast. Now, manufacturing for a miniatures game used to be anywhere from, I'll call it 11 to 18 months. So, and you know, there's a lot of cash flow implications to that. You're signing licenses early, you're paying for tooling at month 11 before the release comes out, you are paying for product at month 6 before the release comes out, so you have a lot of cash out before that cash comes back in the form of sales. What digital sculpting and 3D outputting has allowed us to do, and digital tooling even, allowed us to compress that schedule to anywhere from, I'll call it 6 months if you're in a hurry and you're really fast, to about 11 months, 6 to 11 months. So it's changed everything and allowed, Wizkids to be a little bit more prolific and speedy and reactive. So now when there's a hot IP, I can actually take advantage of it. When there's a hot technology, I can take advantage of it. Whereas before, it would have been 18 months before I would have gotten into market with something. So we embrace it. I don't look at it as a threat right now. Things can change. I mean, but it's not viable right now. The machines are expensive, slow, it's cumbersome, it's rather toxic. So.
How do you see 3D printing in the future? How is it going to affect you guys?
How does it affect us now?
Or in the future? Because things are changing quite rapidly in the world.
Well, I don't know how it's going to affect us in the future. Right now it's too expensive for us to work with. I mean, as far as making parts for games. We generally use wooden components. So 3D printing wooden components requires us to get trees that we can grow in the right shapes to make this all work. The problem we have with 3D printing is bootleg product right now, and that's kind of a continual problem. People manufacturing product without a license, it's a pain in the ass.
For you
I think this is a story that's ahead of its time. So sometimes there are stories that are behind their times, and suddenly there's some disruptive technology catches up with us. This one, I think, is significantly ahead of its time. Who here has a 3D printer? Does anybody have any experiences with 3D printers? Okay. We have two 3D printers that work. We have a $100,000 3D printer, and we have a $3,000 3D printer. And we use them for all sorts of prototyping. We do all sorts of different work with them. Like our X-Wing ships, for example, if anyone here plays X-Wing, they're made internally and they're printed in our giant, very expensive machines. These things are slow, very, very slow. They're very, very expensive. The materials themselves is extremely expensive. The resins needed to these things, the different materials that you need, the different curing materials. Even the so-called consumer machines are very, very, very nascent. They're very slow. I mean, I think Hasbro's going to be coming out with a Build My 3D toy printer here in a couple of years. And I don't know how well it's going to go over because people are, I want this little teddy bear, beep. They have to come back. I mean, even at the fastest
Tuesday
possible
morning.
level. It is very, very slow. It is technology that is to get to what you really want today is that you want something that probably costs. What you're really thinking about is I want a cool Games Workshop figure or something like that printed on the machine. Bam! I can have it now. I can play Wood Elves, next weekend because I printed all my figures. To get that level of quality, you are talking about something that today is going to cost vastly in excess of the actual cost of product. And you still have the issue of you got to get it sculpted, you got to get it made. I mean, a lot of the costs that are, you got to get distributed, you got to get it out there, you got to have it protected. A lot of the issues that involve costs for figures are not actually the printing itself. The only thing you're really saving is the tooling, really, because the plastic injection in the machine is not that expensive in the food chain. The tooling is a very important part. I think the revolution for digital printing is going to come in tooling. If you guys don't know what tooling is, it's the molds that actually make the actual figures that are made. And I think the revolution is going to come more quickly in the next 5-6 years, where they're going to be able to print metal tools and bake them so that those tools are made. They're very difficult to make. Tooling is one of the most complex sciences that we have. Very, very tricky. Different moving tools, different balancing of plastic injection. It's extremely complicated. But I think where it's going to help us reduce costs for games and help everybody is that when they're going to be able to make a $1,000 tool, a $750 tool, because they can 3D print it. Right now it's a hugely manual process with lots of technology and physical labor. There are literally people who have to physically grind channels into super hard steel tools. And that's where I think the revolution is going to come. It's going to help us all. In terms of the sort of print cool stuff at home, I have a lot of people in my office worried about that. I answer this question quite a bit. And if you actually look at the practicality of this stuff, I still think it's a story ahead of its time.
I would like to open the floor to questions that you guys may have. So, first question. Go ahead, sir.
Though I agree with the assessment you guys have made of the industry at present, I would argue that there's a marketing gap. When I look at introducing my friends to these kinds of games, they don't know anything about it. They think war games, they think, oh, Monopoly. And then I introduce them to something like Catan and they love it. Do you not agree with that assessment? And if you do, then what do you plan to do about it? Because I think that this board games in general can have a much wider audience than it currently does. Just people don't know how fun this can be. I mean, you compare the video games market to the board game market as it stands. The fact that it's that much bigger. What do you guys think about that?
I don't know that I understand the question.
We should market them better to the mass market.
Well, it's a step-by-step process. Okay, so think, for instance, we've been in Barnes & Noble 7 years. Is that about right? 7 years? And when we started, none of their customer base had any concept that there was anything out there. So there's a step of education. Now you could say we could spend literally millions and millions of dollars in advertising, but it would have no impact because they'd look at the ads and not understand what we're telling them. And there's no way to explain the emotional impact that a game has on a person to them with an ad. I've never seen an ad that came anywhere near it. Well, maybe some of his print ads, but they were in consumer magazines for gamers. So we have a step-by-step process where we introduce the market. And the problem that we also run into is that the merchants themselves don't comprehend it. They just don't understand at all what we do. So you have to take these little steps. And in the process of that, we started with the United States, Target, which is a big chain. But Target's customer base is slightly more tech savvy than, say, Walmart's. So the jump for us was not as bad. For them, and in that department, they claim that we have the #1 revenue generating product in the toy department. I find that a little hard to believe, but if they want to believe that, that's fine. We'll use it as leverage to get other products in there. So as you start to educate these markets, it's just a step-by-step thing. And figure, this will sound, we're talking 7 years with Barnes & Noble. And if they continue to progress, okay, and they don't go out of business tomorrow, on the average, they probably introduce about 50,000 new people a year to Catan. Or people buy it there, but the people are introduced by their friends. Not probably 8 out of 10 times, or they hear about it. We've managed to get product on 11 TV shows in the last 3 years, 4 years. And that visualization of some television person playing Catan has a lot of impact in the market. Actually, I'm playing your stuff on there too, Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
So, I still think it's a step-by-step process. The more apostolizing you do, the faster it grows.
I think our marketing is to try to put the resources into making good product. If you really ask me why aren't we doing multi-million-dollar TV ads, that ultimately sort of becomes like the question. I do get this question a lot. Like it particularly happens when a product is failing, and it's just not doing as well as we'd like, and we get blamed often because why aren't we advertising in Time Magazine? Why aren't we? Why I'm serious.
I know what the ad rate is for a page in Time Magazine.
It's clearly our fault that we're killing the game because the sales are declining and we're not throwing millions of dollars after it. The reality of big marketing advertising campaigns like that is that they don't work if to advertise to a broad audience you have to have broad availability. It makes no sense to spend millions of dollars in advertising so everyone and their daughter will sort of know that this game is cool. They can say, yeah, this game is cool, this is awesome. Where the hell do I buy it? If they can't go to Target, Toys R Us, whatever, and actually just pick it up, then all that money, vast majority of that money is just lost. And who pays for marketing advertising dollars? In the end, you do, and then our consumers do, so that has to come off of somewhere. Some of our we have profits, we can take some of that stuff out of it, but in the end, it's going to have to be built into the products. So what Bob was saying is that the markets really need to be educated. You'd be surprised at how few people in the entire United States, all the tens of thousands of stores, how few people actually control the access to those stores. And they're worried. When you're a buyer for Target, you don't take risks. You will be blamed if you put some crazy game on there and then you're not making your goals. Then how do you think you're going to do in your review?
What review?
Well, the review even comes up, right? I mean, it becomes a very tricky proposition. So we have by quality, by word of mouth, by consistent representation, gone out and said, hey, try these games. They're great. They're awesome. And we're making good progress. He's making the best progress of all.
Now we've done some other crazy things too. We've sponsored a merit badge for Girl Scouts. Now, don't laugh, a gaming merit badge, but part of it is actually designing a little game and having to play certain types of different games. We also wrote, that's the right word, 3 out of the 4 writers for the Boy Scout merit badge on games were Mayfair employees. Okay, so that's left-handed doing it, you know. We have programs for churches, schools, educators. Trust me when I say educators don't get it. Sorry if there's any teachers here, you're the exception to the rule, but for the most part, they don't see the value of using games in class, even though we have ad campaigns that talk about collateral learning, because when you learn, you something every time you play a game, whether you know it or not. So.
I mean, it is a fair question. If things are so awesome, why aren't we letting everybody know? And it's a step-by-step process.
That's apostles.
There's no real.
Disciples.
We are still a fairly small industry. I would say, all in all, everyone included, everyone in bed together, we're about $1 billion industry. Okay, now the toy industry worldwide is 100 times that, it's just not practical for us to try to beat those same, compete against those same ad minutes that those guys have. And frankly, a company like Hasbro that advertises some new toy, probably not really doing it, frankly, to just maybe make money on that new toy specifically. They're doing it. They're doing it defensively because Hasbro has a relationship with these mass merchants where they're guaranteed a significant amount of shelf space, and they basically have a carte blanche to say what goes on them. We have to go through these individuals, and so they are out there doing mass advertising so that they can actually move dollars so they can retain their favorite positions. There's just a lot of very tricky issues when it comes to spending a very significant amount of dollars. Like I can tell you that if we were to do a mass market TV campaign for one of our games, just in Minnesota, we would be spending our entire marketing budget for the year.
And maybe not.
And we have a pretty significant marketing budget.
And maybe not break through.
For our industry.
Right. And you still
And it probably wouldn't work because people wouldn't find the games very easily.
Yeah, you get caught up in the noise. Breaking through the noise is very difficult. I think Chris and Bob both said it right. Like, it's about the product, stupid. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what my customers say. Make great product, and we'll spread the word. And in my case, and I think in Chris's case, we sign these big licenses. Honestly, that's a form of marketing. When Avengers is the biggest selling movie, and you have Avengers HeroClix, that's a great form of marketing. What our job at that point is to expose these people through them, whether that's through our licensing relationships on Marvel.com or on our Facebook pages. Spreading the word that way has been tremendously powerful for us. My marketing budgets are actually very small. My product budgets are very big, and I'm willing to spend on my tooling, spend on my painting to deliver a high quality product that resonates, and I'll run the marathon rather than the sprint, so that I don't have to pass those marketing costs on to you.
I mean, you said that you introduced some of those games to some of your friends.
Right.
Yay, it works!
Right.
It is the #1 way.
Right.
That's the thing. The fact is, I'm introducing it to friends who I know would be important, but I know there's such a wider market out there, and I don't know how to expand it beyond the niche. I'm not, in marketing in the board game industry, but
There's no easy answer, though. It really isn't. I mean, you would think there'd be an easy method, but
Is it true though with a bricks and mortar shop that they don't make enough money from board games to remain viable? Most of their profits come from booster packs, from collectible card games. That's where you see the queues of teenagers just forking out the cash for the booster packs. You buy a board game, you got it. That's it. You walk out. You don't.
Yeah, very few people can buy just one, though. It's like potato chips.
Most of
but I-
us OCD in this room. That's why.
But I think from the standpoint of, well, I'm going to interrupt Chris, but from the standpoint of looking at this from a retailer standpoint or a distributor, okay, no good store should rely on one product. Okay, the broader the lines they carry, the better rotaries they do, the more sales they're going to have, and the store is going to be fresher. You've got to rely on different types of customers. A lot of people that start with CCGs end up playing board games or miniatures or walking off into the sunset, but they all start someplace, and it's something of interest to them. It might be HeroClix. They're playing HeroClix for a while, and somebody goes, "Hey, look at these weird cards. They're like magic."
Make the numbers bigger on HeroClix for people like my eyes. I'll play more. At the moment, I can't. With glasses on, I can't read the icons on the tiles.
Well, they're going to make special HeroClix.
New product.
Jeweler.
This thing is this big.
Right.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I really don't want to end this without asking you guys, what can we expect from your companies in the next year? What's coming out? What are you guys planning to bring out?
For me, expect the unexpected.
How do we follow that?
Some of my customers know the guy. We do
Wow.
we do crazy things.
We should just go.
I know.
We do some somewhat irrational things sometimes. When I think more concretely, we've just launched a new game called Dice Masters, and it's received pretty good response. We don't know how big it is, but you'll expect to see a lot of what we call platform exploitation. So we are a platform-based company. We apply licenses to a game engine and iterate. So we just announced D&D Dice Masters, Marvel Dice Masters, DC Dice Masters, and UK Dice Masters. Expect more of the same there.
Dice prices are increasing already for my
Right.
games, right? It's taking up all the dice factories.
Elected president of Dice Masters.
Yeah.
What's Mayfair bringing? What are you guys up to?
Well, I can't say we're going to come up with anything new or innovative or really clever. I expect that we'll have a lot of very stable and very good new titles coming out next year and this year. We're getting ahead of our curve finally, after 30 friggin' years, but our product development has improved greatly in the last couple of years, and we've got a lot of new designers who are easier to work with than some of our old designers. And we have a lot of very innovative but funny, tongue-in-cheek products coming out in the next couple of years. Good stuff. A lot of it's lighter, because we're looking at doing what we're supposed to be doing, apparently, being the gateway for a lot of people into the industry. So we're going to be balancing very, very heavy gamer games with very light introductory games that gamers will like to play because they can play with anybody.
What's Fantasy Flight up to?
It's confidential. Well, one of the things about when I have talks like this, and one of the things, I mean, maybe somebody's near, it's like, he's gonna tell you something new, and I can't tell you something new. We are very
make a game.
We are very very tight-lipped. I can talk about some generalities. We have a fairly diverse range of products, and we are committed to supporting a lot of those ranges, and I think you'll see lots of great, cool expansion and support releases from us. We sort of took a breather from some of our true R&D about a year and a half ago when we came out with both X-Wing and our Netrunner, because we had to reconfigure some basic building blocks within our company to take care of those volumes that were required. So we must hurry.
No, I said roly.
So we spent a period of time where we did not go as intensively into new product development because we're focusing on rebuilding some internal processes and some factory capacities and we've concentrated a lot on making sure we could expand X-Wing and Netrunner in a sensible way. But that was about a year and a half to 2 years ago. That took us about 6 months, and we have been working on 3 to 5 incredible new game lines. Last year we put out a few new ones. I'm really proud of Eldritch Horror, which is a sister product to Arkham Horror. But this year I'm really excited to say that we're going to have some of the coolest new things, brand new lines, brand new games, very innovative, special, and what did you say you were not doing? Well, we're going to do the stuff that Bob is not doing.
Confidentially.
Innovative, confidentially. So I'm very, very excited about what we have. If you're curious about
hologram technology.
If you're curious about what we're doing, I think you'll be able to see here over the next 2 months is generally when we announce our most exciting things. Leading up to Gen Con, right before Gen Con, look at our website almost every week or almost every day at some point. We will announce something really cool, and what I think is really cool. And then at Gen Con itself, we reveal something. And I think if you like big, ambitious, really special, innovative things, big view, big picture stuff that we like to do, I think you'll be very pleased with what we have coming up. So I'm really excited about the future. I'm really excited about what we have coming up. So hopefully you'll check it out.
Hey, that's my fish too.
Unfortunately, time has very much run out on us as predicted. Thank you very, very much for your time and your very wise insight. Much appreciated.
Thank you.